Aye.
Now we're going to turn it over to Kate Evanishin and Stephanie Titani, the Assistant Deans for Part-Time Faculty Affairs in Parsons and the School for Public Engagement. Kate and Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. I am Stephanie Sitani. Hopefully you can all hear me. I'll just ask Rita to give me a thumbs up. Thank you. I apologize in advance. I am in a room with a very loud air conditioner. So if you have trouble hearing me, please do let me know and I'll run over and just turn it off. But as Rita mentioned, my name is Stephanie Sitani. I'm the Assistant Dean for Part-Time Faculty Affairs in the Schools for Public Engagement, specifically here at the New School. I've been at the New School for 4 years now, and I wanted to welcome all of you to the New School in this very interesting time that is higher education. Kate and I will be taking you through some slides on what we would refer to as resources and support, some really critical nitty-gritty systems that you will be using as faculty very regularly here at the New School, and which we feel are quite important that you be comfortable with before the start of the semester in order to ensure that it is as positive as possible of a semester with us. So we'll go to the next slide. So teaching in fall 2020 will be undoubtedly a history-making semester here at the New School. The New School has never held a semester fully online before. So you are joining us at a really interesting and critical period in the university's history. So welcome, both Kate and I, but also the rest of the team here and all of your other contacts within your specific departments and colleges are really here to support you the best we can. And as we go through these slides, I would encourage you to place questions that you may have in the chat. And I know that you've received these slides prior to joining us for orientation today. So perhaps you'll have new questions as we go through the material, but we'll also be sure to get to your questions at the end of the presentation, where we'll go through those that are in the chat, as well as those that may have been submitted prior to orientation today. And we'll make sure that if there are any questions that are left unanswered after the presentation, that we follow up with you thereafter to answer any of those questions that were left unsaid. So one of the things that all of you will need to complete before the start of the semester, and many of you may have already completed it, is the online teacher training course. The online teaching training course is mandatory for all of our faculty who are teaching in the fall 2020 semester, and has been designed by our distributed education team within the university. You should have received information about this by now. Still in the process of onboarding and completing your paperwork, or just waiting for HR to process that paperwork. My understanding is that you may have to wait until all of that is done before you can actually start the training, because of a variety of mechanisms that need to make sure that you are live in our systems in order for you to be able to access that. But please make sure that you keep that in mind and try to complete it before the start of the semester. If you have any questions about that, again, we'll address them later, or you can go to your local representative within your department or college. In addition to that, given that the fall 2020 semester is online, fully online, for the first time in the history of the New School, one of the things that we ask that you pay particular attention to is the academic integrity policy of the university, which we provided a link to in the slide, as it relates to both your own course content on Canvas, as well as the material that students will be handing in through assignments. We don't necessarily have a policy that says that you have to use a software like Turnitin or anything that to monitor issues related to plagiarism with students, or other ways in which material may intentionally or unintentionally be borrowed from sources. But I think that given the complexities of running courses online and learning online in the online space for the first time, there may be additional issues that come up with that and the frequency in which that comes up. So again, we're here to support you as well as the students as we navigate that new space in learning, but something that you may wish to become familiar with as it relates to the university's policies on academic integrity. And then finally for this slide, we also wanted to note information for you regarding privacy and information security guidance. Again, there are sort of federal regulations that provide guidelines on how information needs to be used and accessed in university settings, but this has become even more paramount as we move to the online format, right? So there are ways in which the university is working to safeguard information in the digital space. And we implore you to really look through that link and look at sort of policies related to that to ensure that we are doing our best to maintain security around not just your own information, but students' information as well. Next slide. So getting started, I mean, there are some really basic things that all of you need to ensure that you have and that are set up for you before the first day of class in order to ensure that things go as smoothly as possible. And some of this, or really most of it, is related to systems and pieces of information that you will receive only once you've completed onboarding. So for those of you who are still in the process of onboarding, please don't panic. These are all things that are still forthcoming for you. For those of you who have completed onboarding, you should already have some, if not all of these pieces of information in order to help you get set up for the start of the semester. So what you, at the most basic level, you will need what we call an N number, a net ID, and an ID card, though the ID card is, you know, how you access it and when you receive it is a little bit more fluid this semester, given that you will not necessarily be going to campus physically and accessing certain buildings that you would need to swipe your new school ID card for. So, you know, some of this information is specifically related to what you need if you were physically on campus, but we want to make sure that you have all this information. So all students, faculty, staff are issued an identification number while they are at the new school. This is what we refer to as your N number. Your N number typically starts with the letter N, even though it's a number. It starts with the letter N and is followed by 2 or 3 zeros and then a series of numbers, 8 digits, right? Your N number along with your last name is what will then allow you to look up your net ID. Your net ID and then the password that you set up for that account will allow you to log in to a variety of new school portals, accounts, get you access to software, so on and so forth. And you'll see in the next slide, we have a nice go-to link that's sort of like a one-stop shop place for you to log into our main portal and then be able to access additional systems and portals from there. So this is it, my.newschool.edu. I will be throwing a lot of URLs at you by the time I finish my portion of the presentation. If you forget all of them, the one I encourage you to remember is my.newschool.edu, because once you're at that link, you'll really be able to access everything else as long as you log in. So what can you access from there? Your email, Canvas, which is the online learning portal that we are using for online instruction for the fall 2020 semester, with a caveat, and I'll get to that in just a second. Your information related to your courses, if you were teaching in person, if we were on campus, then you would be able to access your room assignments there. It's also where you'll be able to see your rosters of students who are registered for your courses, so on. At the end of the semester, it's where you'll be able to access things like your course evaluations, which I encourage you to all look at. It's where you'll get access to IT services and support, library, your personal information, other systems like Starfish and MyDay, which we'll go through in just a second. Next slide, please. So one of the systems that I think many of you will end up using most frequently is something we call MyDay. And And MyDay, for those of you who are not familiar with it, MyDay is an HR, human resources related software and system that we use for HR related topics, practices, as well as payroll. The system will allow you to do things like update your personal information, particularly under a pandemic. Unfortunately, we ask that you make sure that your personal information is as up to date as possible, so that if there are any emergencies, we have the ability to reach you or your emergency contact as quickly and smoothly as possible. But it's also a place where you'll be able to see things like your pay stubs. Or, you know, if for whatever reason you receive your first pay stub and you feel like you have too many dollars in taxes being withheld or too few, that's where you can go in and make adjustments. For part-time faculty in particular, it's where you'll be able to review your official appointment letters and where you will have to sign your official appointment letters every semester, as well as change benefit elections, as I just mentioned. So if you ever want to log in directly to MyDay, this is the link you would use, myday.newschool.edu. But as I just mentioned previously, you will be able to access the system if you just go to my.newschool.edu. But again, there's the direct link in case you want to use it that way. Next slide, please. Next is Canvas. So as I previously mentioned, Canvas is the university's online learning / course related portal. It is the platform based on which the distributed education training course on online teaching is based on. So when you complete that training, if you haven't yet, your training will be specifically related to Canvas and how to use that system, that portal for online instruction. It is quite a robust system, and accordingly our training is quite robust. There's a lot that you can actually do with Canvas. And for those of you who are familiar with Canvas but may not have received training on it recently, there have been a series of updates or additional functions that have been added to the platform recently. So we expect that you will find the training in full to be quite useful. So again, that's something that you can log in to through my.newschool.edu. It is where you will need to do things like post your syllabus. It's where you can post announcements for your students, readings, assignments, discussions, so on and so forth. And we have a nice little link there for any assistance you may need. Now, I should also say that though we suspect that a majority of your instruction will take place through Canvas during the fall, Canvas does have plugins or built-in features to access other connections, right? Other systems like Google Drive, Zoom, so on and so forth. So I know that there are some instructors who are joining us for the first time for the fall who will probably be teaching synchronous courses, meaning live courses where students will need to be logged on to classes at a specific day, at a specific time on a specific day. So, you know, perhaps let's just assume that you're going to be teaching those courses through Zoom. Even if your primary platform of instruction will be Zoom, you are still required to ensure that you have a Canvas course site set up. And at the bare minimum, your Canvas course site has to have your syllabus posted for access. This is really an issue of equity and inclusion for our students. It is also the main way in which you can communicate with students, and we encourage you to communicate other than email, whether it's through sending emails through Canvas or posting announcements, because again, for students at the New School, Canvas has really been the main portal and the main system that students are used to, and which they will be accessing and looking at to receive information about your course.
And
Next
keep
slide.
in mind that many students will be taking multiple courses. So the more that faculty can be using the same systems in similar ways, it will be easier for them.
Exactly. Thank you, Rita. Next slide, please. Okay, so if you've had a chance to take a look at the deck before meeting with us today, you'll see that we included a few screenshots just to help you visually start to become comfortable or familiar with what these internal pages are going to look like. Again, some of you may have already seen these, not just from the deck, but because you were already able to log into the system because you have your N number and your net ID. For those of you who don't have those pieces of information yet, here are some screenshots just to help familiarize you with it. So as you see, this is sort of the main my.newschool.edu page once you've logged in. I want to highlight just a few things, particularly what we refer to as the apps locker. So once you're logged into my.newschool.edu, you'll see in the upper right-hand corner, there's an icon with 3 slashes or 3 bars under each other. And if you click on that, you'll see this menu appear on the right-hand side called apps. And this is where you'll be able to access a lot of those resources that I was mentioning in the beginning, including Canvas, your email, so on and so forth. Another thing just to highlight real quickly, which is boxed in this neon green color, is the dashboard. So on your main screen within my.newschool.edu, one of the main things you will see under the Me tab are the courses that you are assigned, right? So if you have completed onboarding, you have an N number, and your department has been able to officially attach your name to the course or courses that you have been hired to teach in the fall, then the course or the courses should now appear for you in that portal. And it provides a variety of information, which we'll look at in just a second. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this screenshot is specifically Canvas, right? So if from the previous slide, we don't need to go there, Sheena, but you know, where it had your course or courses listed, you would then be able to click on that course or courses, and it would bring you then into Canvas. Another way to do that would have been to go through the apps locker and just scroll down to Canvas and click on Canvas there, and that would bring you in here too. So what you're now looking at is specifically the Canvas entry page. We've highlighted a few key features of the system for you on the left-hand side, which I won't go through too much right now. We can answer questions about it later, but we wanted to provide a visual guidance for you as to what you can expect that portal to look like when you first log in. And again, you will become much more familiar with this page once you complete the training related to Canvas. Next slide, please. Okay, so we'll move on quickly to one of the other key systems that faculty should be familiar with while teaching at the new school, and this is called Starfish. Starfish is primarily a system that the university uses for 2 things, really. One is attendance taking, and the other is keeping the community being all of us, right? Not just faculty, but also administrators and those involved with student progression and student success, specifically towards ensuring that our students are doing well in a variety of formats. So we'll see in just a second, but the system is quite robust in the sense that it allows us to do a variety of things in order to ensure that our students are progressing towards their degree completion, but also looking forward towards career planning and a variety of other tools. So we'll go to the next slide and take a look at what this looks like. So in terms of attendance taking, we highly recommend that you log into Starfish every week to take attendance. You will be able to access your rosters through Starfish as well as Canvas. But in terms of taking attendance, Starfish is the key system that you need to be recording attendance in. Because the back end of the system then allows your attendance records to port into a variety of other informational systems that key members of the university administration can see, those primarily related to student success in helping students succeed. One key thing to remember when you are taking attendance in Starfish is that you always have to press save after, marking people in attendance or absent or whatnot. If you don't press save, then the system will not save any of the information that you just entered. Next slide, please. So this is just another screenshot to provide you with an idea of what this looks like. You see on the left-hand side that it's a bit small, your roster, the students' names, and then it'll give you a variety of options in terms of how you mark them in terms of attendance. And then again, on the bottom, we've circled and highlighted the save button for you just to ensure that you don't forget that piece. Next slide, please. Now, in addition to taking attendance, one of the things that Starfish will allow you to do is to fill out progress surveys, right? So the university will ask faculty twice a semester to give some kind of sense of how students are doing in the class. It's sort of like a small check-in. I think that what happens is that there's an email blast that goes out alerting you to the time in the semester when you are asked to fill out these progress surveys. The notification of the survey will appear in the top of your Starfish screen. So there will be, a link there that you can click on that will then take you into the progress survey specifically. But it is a nice way for our team in student success, again, to have a sense of how students are doing. If there are any concerns, that they know about that as early into the semester as possible so that they can still work with those students to ensure that they have a successful remaining successful semester for the remainder of the time that your course is running, and to ensure that if there are issues with the students' progress in your course, that they have the ability to provide support, resources, or any other guidance that would be appropriate to that student. Next slide. Sorry, can we go to, oh, there we go, awesome. So in addition to those surveys, there are additional ways where you as instructors can proactively highlight concerns in Starfish so that others in the administration of the university have the ability to work with that student, or so that they become aware of the concerns that you may have as an instructor. So these screenshots provide you some guidance on how to do that. What I will say about Starfish is that from what I've heard from faculty that I work with specifically, one of the aspects that our instructors have felt Starfish is most successful in is in what we call raising flags. So Starfish has a function where if you have a concern regarding a student in your course, that you can just raise a flag for the student success team or the student's student advisor. And what the system will ask you to do is to provide some kind of information on what your concern is, or what you think the student's advisor needs to know. What I would ask, and I think Rita will echo this, is that if you feel the need to raise a flag for a student and you are filling out one of these forms in which you are expressing why you think that student needs help, is that you not jump to conclusions about what might be going on with the student, but rather provide as much of a descriptive, written description of what is happening or what kind of behavior or what kind of concerns you have, so that the student success team can deal with it appropriately. So for example, you may have a student who up until the midterm point in the semester was doing quite well. They were engaged, they were showing up to class regularly, they were handing in assignments. Then all of a sudden, let's say the student stops attending class, Perhaps you have reached out to everyone in the class requesting them to submit an assignment by whatever deadline, and that student does not submit the assignment by the deadline, and the student has become unresponsive to your communications, right? We would ask that when you raise that flag in Starfish and you provide your description of what is going on, that you not make statements by which you are drawing a conclusion of what has happened to the student, right? So instead of saying, I don't have a good example of what would be a wrong thing to write in those descriptions, but what I personally would ask that you write is that, you know, the student has stopped responding to communications. The student has stopped attending scheduled class sessions. The student has not handed in assignments since, and then, you know, put a date. So please describe the situation as best that you can, but do not draw any conclusions based on the behavior that you're seeing of the student, so that the student success team can reach out to the student and figure out what might be going on. Next slide, please. Okay, so I think this is my stopping point. So I'll turn things over to Kate now, who will talk about student health services and a variety of other resources that you will want to become familiar with before the start of the semester.
Thanks, Stephanie. Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Evanishin. I'm the Assistant Dean for Part-Time Faculty at Parsons. I've been in this role, or in part-time faculty affairs, for about 10 years now. And I've been the dean or the assistant dean for about 4 years. So about as long as Stephanie has been in her role, I've been in mine. I'd like to thank Rita and Rachel and Sheena for organizing today. This has been amazing. Thank you so much. And I'll dovetail into student health services right now, because that actually follows very, very nicely on the framework that Stephanie just outlined for Starfish. So student health services, and I'll be talking a lot about actual physical offices that have staff and actionable items attached to them, things that they can provide to you right now. So student health services is one of those offices. They provide counseling, medical services, and other types of services as listed here. Currently, and we can go to the next slide, they're providing all of their services through telehealth. You'll see I've added a couple of slides. I'm a little bit late to the game. I was adding to our PowerPoint deck until about a couple of hours ago, just to make sure that we had the most relevant and up-to-date information on fall. So to echo what Stephanie had said, if you do have a concern about a student, please raise the flag in Starfish. Again, behaviors, not conclusions, and the appropriate staff member will find a way to reach out. So as I noted, also medical visits are being conducted remotely. They're providing healthcare to students located in the US, as well as students located abroad, but they cannot write prescriptions to students who are living outside of the country. One wonderful thing right now is that students can schedule medical and counseling appointments. I would refrain from, if you do have a student that you feel is in some sort of risk for whatever reason, not to offer or suggest that a student reach out to student health services, but you can certainly put on your syllabus the contact information for SHS. You can make an announcement at the start of class. It's always good around pivotal times in the semester, such as the start of the semester, midterms, and when we're sort of rolling towards the end of the semester. It's really good to advise students of these resources they have on campus, because they may be struggling and not even realizing. Sheena, we can go to the next slide. Great. So the University Learning Center is the next office I'll talk to you about. This is also a wonderful service that we have for students, but also for you as faculty. The ULC provides one-on-one tutoring and other kinds of services for students, including writing. They support our ESL students. They help with things like time management, our really robust Creative Cloud suite that is available both to students and to you as faculty. You can download that. in my day. Take a look at the apps locker there. And then again, in fall 2020, this will come as no surprise, but all tutoring sessions are online. So students can make appointments. They can do walk-in sessions as well as early as 15 minutes before they request a session. Again, much like student health services, I would try to refrain from referring individual students to those services. It may be a triggering event, but just make all of your students aware that this is available for them. Next slide, please. So again, this is another Starfish referral. You can use that. And then you can, I'm not sure how one requires students to visit the ULC. I'll have to look into that. And I can get back to everyone on that. I think that there may be a requirement somehow if a student is struggling academically, but looking at this bullet, I don't have deeper information on that. Can we go to the next slide? Great. So one wonderful resource that the ULC provides you as faculty is that they can do in-class workshops. They can do them synchronously in your class or asynchronously. They can provide a recording that can be made available to your students. These 4 bullet points are just some examples of the kinds of workshops they offer, but they can also work with you if you're finding you're doing something very specific, or if you have a class of students who seems to be struggling around one topic. You can work with one of their professionals there to tailor one of their workshops or create a workshop that sort of focuses on specific assignments and lectures. And then this final guideline for instructors is just kind of a one-pager that does an overview of their services and the kinds of work that they do with students. And I think also some of the services they provide you as faculty. We can go on. Libraries and archives, I provided this video here. We're not going to watch it right now, but Libraries has created a series of really, really terrific videos about their various services. And I highly recommend, I think they have a YouTube channel that you check it out, because they can talk about what they do way better than I can talk about what they do. So if you haven't watched the video, please do so, and we can go to the next slide. These are links to many of their key resources. Many of these have been updated for our current situation being online. But they're basically perennial. These are services that our library does provide across the board, whether in person or in the virtual environment. Next, please. So building access. We all know that we're all remote. However, as we plan to kind of reemerge into campus life, some buildings are being readied for limited access to students primarily, staff to a certain extent, and faculty to a lesser extent. There are currently 4 buildings that are being prepared to be online. That's the Sheila Johnson Design Center at 2 West 13th. That's where one of the Making Center hubs is located for those of you who have students who utilize making tools. Arnold Hall at 55 West 13th. 25 East 13th, which is Arnold Hall houses, I believe, Copa and Manus and many of the theater and music programs. 25 East 13th, which I believe is mostly architecture, although I could be wrong. And then the UC, which is the university's main hub of activity. However, I will say that these locations, again, the Making Center areas, the buildings are mostly relegated to student task time, and access is limited to faculty, excepting for those who need to access materials that they may have left behind in a previous semester, so access to lockers or studio space. So it's not necessarily relevant to you as new faculty at this very moment. As I noted before, all other services continue to be online, like library services. Computer labs, I'm not sure what this necessarily means, that it states that they're limited, there's a limited capacity, but I think that there may be some opportunity for students to use those spaces. I don't think faculty though. And then equipment centers by reservation, that is Making Center and other places that check out things to make things with. We can go next. So this slide I hesitated putting in because it's not necessarily relevant right now, but we will all be back on campus at some point. So we've got a faculty resource center for you, for our part-time faculty, which is in our university center, that big building at 63 Fifth Avenue. It is in room 308, and there it is key card swipe, so you will use your new card that Stephanie talked about once you have it. It is accessed for you, keyed into your card as part-time faculty, and when we're back on campus, you can use that space with workstations. They have bookable conference rooms if you wish to meet with your colleagues, or if you need to meet with students for any reason. You're not required to hold office hours, but if you need to meet with students or feel it would be beneficial, you can do so there. And it can be booked through the library website. It's in the same building that our main library is located. And then there are some administrative functions for you. So copier, scanner, printer, etc. And of course, coffee. We can go next. So we mentioned, or someone had a great question about an issue with Zoom in the chat earlier, and I think it was Rachel who put in the IT link, and Rita made some comment about, you know, troubleshooting. IT is a great service to us. They are really responsive, and they have a huge amount of resources made available. That's why this slide is so simple, because to list everything that they provide or can do for us would just, it's a booklet. So I highly recommend that you check out, you know, services and their quick links. They also have a blog, but should you get into trouble, this is their email address. And I think, as Rita noted, you can also open a ticket through, through My New School in the apps locker or on the drop down. So if you ever have any issues, you can open a ticket, you can start a chat, and they're incredibly responsive. There's also a Get Started guide, I believe, in the quick links. That I keep trying to point to things on my screen like you can see it. But in the quick links, there's a Get Started that should be able to, if you're still having nervousness or really need some additional support for getting started with teaching online, you can check those out too. We can go next. So the university does have community standards and conduct standards. It was really great to hear Ronnie's updated Title IX sexual harassment, anti-sexual harassment and misconduct overview. This was the first time I'd heard the new guidelines, which was great. So more than encourage, I urge you to check out these policies at newschool.edu/policies. Please make yourself familiar with them. There are also some mandatory online trainings that I believe you're probably already familiar with. Please take them. We can go next. Human resources. Anybody who has a human resources, we have a very big team. They have dedicated part-time faculty staff. They are there to answer payroll questions if you get stuck trying to navigate your MyDay and you've exhausted all options. But they have a very robust website as well. So you can check out information on services, benefits, holidays that they have listed. That's where you'll find the labor relations page. I think Giselle dropped that into the chat when the union made their presentation this morning. That's where you'll find your copy of the CBA. So again, just like Marie said this morning, I highly encourage you to take a look at it and familiarize yourself with that, but our general HR page as well. Next, please. So there are some responsibilities. Ronnie alluded to some of these, but then there are also administrative responsibilities that you have as an employee and as part-time faculty specifically, as a member of the faculty at the New School. When you are teaching, you are required to check your New School email regularly. Generally speaking, if you're teaching actively, please check it once a day during the semester. This is the way that you communicate with anyone within the new school community. It has to do with FERPA guidelines and our own safety and security. You will receive, if you haven't already, an appointment letter through MyDay. Your appointment letter is kind of your contract of what you are appointed to teach for the fall semester. You are asked to accept that appointment. Should you wish to accept the appointment, please do so on MyDay. If when you receive your appointment letter, you decide that you cannot accept the appointment, please reach out to your part-time faculty professional, usually you're the person who onboarded you, to decline that appointment. You are, and I noticed somebody dropped this into the chat, asked to provide a yearly updated CV and resume. This is an annual call that goes out to all faculty through Labor Relations. It happens later in the semester. So you may have provided your CV when you applied, but per CBA regulations, you are also required to submit it later on through this open call to part-time faculty. We ask that you keep in touch with your department and program. This has never been so important as it is this semester. So please keep an open channel, respond to emails, ask questions. Your program leadership, your academic leadership, your part-time faculty affairs point person, we're all here to answer your questions. And again, please complete the online trainings that I noted before, the information security, preventing discrimination and sexual violence, and the unlawful harassment prevention trainings. Next, please.
You know what? That is the last slide I have. Let me pull up your PowerPoint and see if there's one I missed.
I think that was it. I think the last slide was just noting thank you for listening to us, and Stephanie and I are here to answer any questions you might have. Thank you, Sheena. So I will note, like I said at the start of my bit of the spiel, I did add a couple of slides around student health services, a little bit of library services, and the ULC. So we can send this updated deck, and my apologies to Rita and team for adding at the last minute.
Could I add something real quick, Kate, while if we still have a few minutes, Rita? I know that in SPE specifically, we're receiving quite a few questions about one of the documents related to onboarding, and that's getting the I-9 notarized. So I don't know, Kate, if you're receiving questions like this as well, but I thought we could address it really quickly here. Some of you have expressed that you're having difficulties getting the I-9 notarized. I wanted to let you know, and Kate, correct me if I'm wrong, that HR is now allowing you to submit your paperwork without the I-9 being notarized. So we want to make sure that this does not cause a delay in processing your documents. Essentially what will happen is that you can submit the completed I-9 to your contact person within the school that you will be teaching in, and provide copies of the documents that you're indicating as proof of work authorization and identity on the I-9. What will happen is that once the university offices reopen in person, you will then have to go to HR and provide them with proof, so to speak, that those documents are valid, meaning you will have to bring hard copies of those documents into HR, whether that's a passport, a driver's license, social security card, so on and so forth, and show it to them to prove authenticity of the document. We don't know when those offices are reopening yet, right? But once they do, we will provide an email, or HR will send you an email asking that you kindly come to the office with those documents. So for now, please don't worry about getting the I-9 notarized. You can send your documents to us and all the other paperwork as is. And HR will be able to process your onboarding accordingly.
I just want to call attention to two things that I popped in the chat. One is to a 5-minute video about for students, for how they can prepare for online learning before the start of the semester. Please feel free to share that with your students. We're working on a few others as well, and once we have them, we will share them with you. And also a guide, this comes from the University Learning Center, strategies for online learning. Both can be shared with your students. Please feel free to unmute yourselves. We've got multiple pages, so if you raise your hand, we might not see you, but feel free to step in with any questions that you might have. You can also raise a digital hand within Zoom if you would like to do so.
Someone put in the chat that they cannot see their courses in Canvas yet. It might be that your new hire paperwork hasn't fully been processed. Once you are up and running and your PTF affairs person has received your N number and you get your N number, they can go ahead and appoint you to the class. You should be able to see the class in Canvas within a couple of business days at most. So reach out to your onboarder if that's not the case.
Also, I just want to remind people that the Faculty Center sends out a monthly newsletter with resources. We host a whole lot of workshops that we have been finding that faculty are taking advantage of, in part for a desire for community and in part to figure out how to actually teach online. So we will have a bunch of those, and we will look out for an announcement for a series of workshops to support you and help you in this moment as we're all figuring things out. Ingrid.
Yeah, do the student do the? I recently logged into the library and I found a few books that I would really love to use. And do the students have access to all of those too? Can I just let students know we'll read this chapter? Or
what you want to try to do is contact the library and tell them what the texts are. And the library, as much as possible, will try to make things free for your students. So they might be able to photocopy a chapter, or if they have it electronically, they can link to the e-book or e-article, because as much as possible, we're trying to make things available. They can set it up in Canvas, and your students would be able to access it through Canvas.
So the book I looked at is an e-book, so I know it's digitally available, but can I share it, or do I have to do it through the library? The students don't automatically have access to it. I can't just go find this book in the library and download it.
Correct. You want to go through the library because they'll do e-reserves for you.
Okay. And similarly with recordings, audio recordings?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, if you have them personally and it's appropriate, you can share them, but the library will will give them access.
Okay. Thank you.
Usually we have dozens of questions.
I have so many that I
Go ahead.
No, it's okay.
Go ahead.
I have not completed the course yet, and I think I've only done about half, and I think it will probably answer a lot of it. So I'm.
As you're thinking about teaching, I know that we've sent you the links to the guide to online. Contact the library. Okay, if you go to the library's website, you'll see a big button that says something like Ask Me. The librarians are phenomenally responsive, and they love for you to contact them. They have extraordinary resources, and they would love to work with you and support the work that you're trying to do. Sheena, I'm wondering if you would be able to navigate to the library's webpage and share screen and show what I'm talking about.
Give me just a second, please.
Yeah.
So if you're on the library's page, right over here, there's the contact us where you can text your question.
Actually,
And then
Sheena, that's Archives and Special Collections page.
Oh, thank you. Where do I want to go?
There's the big Ask Us button on the left.
So you can come here to this chat. And ask your question.
And you can also just type in your question and ask it. So they staff this thing. So they will be back in touch with you pretty promptly. And they've archived the previous questions that they've gotten. So it might actually be already in the archive of questions. Thanks, Sheena. Any other questions? You've got us for 10 more minutes if you want us. I'm sorry, Nino, you're muted.
How about now?
There you go.
Yeah, sorry about that. I guess I'm not as adept at this as I thought I was. To follow up with regards to the how responsive the library is, I usually bring in books in my courses, but given that I can't do this now, and a number of the books are out of print, I got in touch with them via Canvas, and I mention it just because it's actually really easy to reach out to them. You could do it right within the online course itself through the course reserves button. And I mentioned I asked them to look to see if they could get a copy of this book or an e-version of it, and it wasn't available. But what they suggested I do is simply scan it and or scan the pieces that I want, and then they will host it directly and create the links in Canvas for me. So I'm going to end up doing a bit of that. I certainly don't really need to go through the library, I don't think necessarily, but I was a little concerned about fair use and copyright restrictions. So the library is more than helpful in making sure that that's taken care of. That's all. So they've been great to work with.
Thanks, Nino. That's great.
Is there anywhere one list? I've received a lot of emails from different parts of the school. Is there one list with contacts, as one document at all?
I highly doubt it.
Okay. Okay.
I have a question.
Sure, Marie.
So I'm teaching a class that meets once a week, and it's almost a 3-hour class. And I'm just wondering what you think about like breaks and like just breaking up that because that's a lot of time. I have a hard time being on a Zoom for more than, a half an hour or an hour.
Is your program expecting you to meet the full 3 hours, or can you use Canvas?
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that we're encouraging people to do is if you have synchronous sessions, use Canvas for delivering material.
Okay.
Use the synchronous sessions for community building, group work, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Because as to your point, I mean, look, we've done this for 3 hours, right?
Right. And you get, right, it gets tired.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Like I'm going through the online learning, and I did actually teach a class at CUNY this summer, full, only online, but it was a 2-hour class. And 2 hours and 3 hours is a big difference. And what I did do was break, you know, I lectured and then I broke them into groups, pulled them back. We discussed that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think well, as I said,
Yeah.
the degree to which you can use Canvas for delivering the course material,
Okay.
and then use the in-person, also keeping in mind, as I put in the chat earlier, these kinds of sessions are inherently inequitable
Mhm.
in that it assumes that you've got strong Wi-Fi. It assumes that you've got the technology to handle it. It assumes that you're in a time zone where you
Right.
can participate.
Mhm.
So I think that I think one of the things that I've experienced as I've been working with faculty over the summer is there's a big shift in mindset that we have to make. This is really not teaching online. This is kind of teaching remotely.
Right.
Whereas if you think about structuring your course in Canvas, you're thinking about, okay, where do I want to lead my students to? How am I going to know they get there? What activities can I structure to lead them there? Okay, now what does the course need to look like? And so that's what the combination of the online training course and Rachel, could I ask you to pop the beginner section of the guide? Because we kind of map out the steps that you can follow for really building a course asynchronously online for people who haven't really done it before. And it's a different way of thinking.
Mhm.
That's why I said earlier that, you know, or maybe it was in the video, I can't remember, that we tend to teach the way we were taught and we tend
Right.
to teach what we were taught.
Right.
And this really requires a shift.
Right. Right. But for me, it's kind of great because my background wasn't a teacher. So it's like, so, and we're all learning this together, right? But I loved what you said before. It's like the learning is not here. This is where we're building community. The learning is what you've put on Canvas.
Exactly.
Okay, thanks.
Perfect.
I'm a little confused about this. So I only teach like a 3-hour class a week, or basically broken up into 2 segments. Does that not mean I have to be there the entire time? Can I, for example, send the students off into break rooms to have them work together on something, and I can just be around for supervision, or so I don't. It's not like I'm basically lecturing the entire time.
Oh no, please don't do that.
Okay.
Yes, no, to use Teams, to use group work, like we did earlier, although hopefully it's still in one Zoom, because we were a little nervous about sending you off to another room, and would you actually come back? Speaking of which, we need to share the link to the teaching handout, because we promised you that we would do that. But yes, to the extent that you can use Canvas for delivering your course materials, and then use synchronous sessions for group work, community building, and maybe short little lectures. Because as I said in the video that I shared with you, even that 23-minute video just didn't make it. And you know, you're having to record, you know, you're recording it, you're looking at yourself, then you have to watch it to see if it works. So yeah, really thinking differently about how you would be using this kind of activity, or even we're going to spend a half an hour together, and then I want you to create your own Zoom meetings and go off together, and then we're going to come back together again.
Another question. Some topics require a lot of practicing, you know, like in my case, the class is design, research, and strategy, and we will learn how to moderate and conduct ethnographic sessions and stuff like that. So how can you do this if in an asynchronous way?
So not really knowing what you're talking about, I could imagine discussion boards in which you break students into groups, and
Yes.
each group has its own discussion board, and maybe you're assigning each one a particular project that they would be working on together, but asynchronously, as well as potentially sometimes coming together for them synchronously outside of a course time.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And you might want to check out in the Guide to Online Teaching and Learning, we have some examples of active learning strategies that can actually be done asynchronously. So it's not that they're just reading and then posting on the discussion board. There are other ways of approaching approaching your teaching.
Right. Thanks.
I have a quick question, and apologies if this is covered in the online learning tutorial that we all have to do, because I haven't had a chance to do that yet. It's more of an ethical question. It's about visibility in synchronous time, in synchronous classes. I assume that it's not ethical or allowed to require students to have their camera on. Is that, I'm assuming that, and I want to just confirm that. And if there are strategies for, if you're having a discussion that's synchronous and some students choose not to have their camera on, about in ways that are effective and also comfortable for the students to encourage participation even when there's not a video on.
Yes, we have no way of knowing what situation they might be dealing with at home.
Absolutely.
And so there might be times when, you can encourage them to please, to the extent that they can, have their video on, but that you understand that there may be some times when they're going to be participating, but that that their video will be turned off.
Yes, I understand that. I'm just wondering if there are suggestions about if you have students, if you have a group of say 20 students, you're trying to have a synchronous discussion and some of them have their cameras off, are there strategies that people have encountered to sort of encourage, again, because you can't.
I can share something.
Yes.
I have my camera off. Maybe I'll just keep it off. This is Rachel speaking. Well, for one thing, I think saying your name before you start speaking, especially when your camera's off, because you can't always tell who's who, can be really helpful. But I think the popcorn method of whoever is speaking, then asking them to pass the baton, so to speak, to someone else, be a good method. And we could kind of state the value of when more voices are heard, we learn more. And, no one knows everything. Everyone knows something. Together we know a lot, which it can be part of a community agreement that you could come back to and set that goal at the beginning of a synchronous talk, and then kind of ask folks to pass it on to voices we haven't heard from yet. And then if there's a student who's maybe has their camera off and there's a reason, and they might chat you saying like, I can't for this one or whatever, then you'll know.
Thank you.
Is there a way that ties into taking attendance?
I wouldn't tie attendance to having the video on for sure. There are people who don't have a strong enough bandwidth to have their video on,
Right.
among other things. The Provost's office put out the expectations for meaningful participation. That is another, you have about an endless number of Google Docs, so put that link in there. I would use that as a guide.
Thanks.
Chico. Unmute.
Hi. Hi. So I have a question. In a Canvas training course, it suggests that I should maybe reach out to each individual student to have maybe a video chat for like 5 minutes or so, or maybe you said that, or someone else mentioned. Does everything start first after the first day of class, or should I reach out to them prior to my first class? This is my question. I mean,
You can do
to get to know.
either way. You can do
Okay.
either way. Some faculty like to reach out ahead of time, introduce themselves. And I think one of the things that it occurs to me we should really be thinking about with students is, and I said it in the video when I talked about metacognition,
Right.
but really helping students think about themselves as learners. So for you to be reaching out to them and saying something like, what do you want me to know about you that might impact your learning this semester?
It could be done email because 18 students to talk 5 minutes, with the video.
You could even do it through Canvas in a discussion board. You could post a question
Discussion board. Okay.
and invite them to say, what do they want you to know about their circumstance, their situation, where they are, and what they might be worried about as learning online. I think that would be really helpful.
So I would do that as soon as possible then. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks.
We're at time. Do keep an eye out. We will be looking for your feedback to know how this went, in anticipation that maybe we'll have to do this again in January. So we would love to get your feedback, and never hesitate to reach out to the Faculty Center with any questions you have, even if it doesn't sound like something appropriate to the Faculty Center. We can triage, we can make sure that it gets to the right person. Also, 2 other things I want to say, especially in this moment, reach out occasionally to your program director or chair. Let them know how you're doing. The questions that we had earlier about 3 hours on Zoom versus Canvas, they're new to this stuff too. So they're learning as well, but don't hesitate to reach out to them. They've got lots and lots of people that they're supervising. You should reach out to them and let them know how you're doing and what you're experiencing. Rachel, Sheena, Stephanie, Kate, any last thoughts?
This is Rachel speaking. Rita, Sheena, and I at the Faculty Center are here for you. So in as much as there are many of you faculty, we like it when you reach out to us. We feel a sense of purpose. So don't hesitate. You can email us at thefacultycenter@New School.
All right, thank you so much for being our guinea pigs for this first virtual new faculty orientation. Really appreciated your forbearance, your patience, and your understanding with us. Thank you all so much, and really wishing you all the best for the coming semester.
Thanks so much. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.